it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Welcome to Eat, Pray, Run, where slow food in the apocalypse doesn't mean you're ending up on the menu. I hope you brought your appetites. I am Dr. Erica O'Neill, a researcher in the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics. And today we're talking zombie cognition, sense of smell, and how to keep yourself safe from their ravenous appetites with Peter Todd and Ann Barwich. But first, I'd like to introduce the host of Eat, Pray, Run, Dr. Rob Dunn. Reynolds Professor in the Department of Applied Ecology at North Carolina State University and a Professor of Human Biodiversity in the Center for Evolutionary Hologenomics at the University of Copenhagen. Rob, can you tell us a bit about the juicy topics we're going to sink our teeth into today?
Ooh, we have an exciting show today. We're going to be talking about zombie foods, zombie smells, and the things that make zombies kind of crazy. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. With that note, let's bring on our first guest, Dr. Peter Todd, Director of the Cognitive Science Program at Indiana University. Peter, how is the zombie apocalypse in the Midwest at the moment?
Well, you know, it's like things are happening elsewhere. Our numbers are kind of going up, but so far the outbreaks have been pretty much contained to some quarantined student housing. We've got a few people who are talking about wanting to build up horde immunity, you know, letting the zombies bite them or at least nibble on them a little bit to get a mild case, but luckily not very many people are believing that.
Peter, it's fair to say you're the world leader in zombie food preferences, or if not the world leader, one of them. Can you talk a little bit about what we know about zombie food preferences? What are we learning? How does that play into how we should think about them?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I lead the Zombie Food Project here at Indiana University. As a cognitive scientist, I'm interested in how things think, whether those things are humans or other animals or AIs or robots, extraterrestrials, or the living dead. And what we've been looking at is what is food for zombies and how can we keep from becoming food for zombies. In our past work that we talked about at the first SAM meeting a couple of years ago, we were asking the question, why do zombies crave human flesh? And to study that, we brought in some subjects, pre-zombies, they were undergraduates, and we asked them to make some decisions about whether or not different kinds of items are edible or not edible. And we showed them morphed photographs of things that transition between an edible object like an apple and an inedible object like a tennis ball. And we asked them, okay, this intermediate object, is it more like the edible thing, the apple, or the inedible thing, the tennis ball? And what we found was that the hungrier people are, the pre-zombies, the more they would categorize those intermediate things as being edible. So their class category of what things are edible got bigger. That's fine. We also then went on to show them edible objects morphed with edible but disgusting objects, including body parts. And so we would have morphs, for instance, from a carrot stick to a severed finger. And we asked them again, okay, here's this intermediate thing. Is it more like the carrot stick or the severed finger? And again, we found that hunger made them classify more of those intermediate things, even though they were disgusting, even though they were body parts, as food-like. And so this made us realize that our question about why are zombies craving human flesh was incorrect. They're not just craving human flesh, they're hungry for everything. And so they eat the closest thing that's available to them, which in our crowded cities would be a human being. That's what we thought at that time. Things have changed since then.
They've changed since then? How have they changed since then?
Well, more and more reports have come in that zombies don't eat everything. They're not hungry for everything. They do actually make choices. For instance, they pass up one of the most common sources of calories around them while they're going after humans or other animals that are around. They don't eat their fellow zombies. So they are making some kind of categorical judgment about what is an edible thing to them and what is not an edible thing to them. And that's what we are trying to figure out now.
And what kind of cues do you think they're using to figure out what's edible and what's not? How do they know what a zombie is versus, I mean, is this, higher consciousness in a zombie, or is there something very simple about knowing?
This is exactly what our question is. We're trying to figure out what are the cognitive aspects of what's going on in the zombies' minds. Are they applying a disgust module that doesn't classify living humans as disgusting, but still tells them that zombies are disgusting and they're not going to eat them? After all, not eating their fellow zombies means they are disgusted not eating those zombies. So could that be from visual cues? That's one of the things that we're looking at. Living humans certainly use visual cues to decide whether or not something they could potentially eat is disgusting. If there is signs of rotting sliminess, or if there's gaping open wounds, those are signs of something being disgusting and not something that you should eat. Or an animal that is not moving properly, maybe it's infected with something, probably you should be disgusted by that and not eat that either. So we want to find out whether or not zombies are using these kinds of cues as well to decide that a living human looks fine, not infected, walking around normally. A zombie doesn't look fine, doesn't have the right kind of gait, might be infected with something that even zombies don't want to eat.
Has this work changed how you think about your own food? Do you find yourself, when you're hungry, aware that things that you would not normally eat suddenly are looking edible? I mean, how do you feel about eating a human versus eating a zombie? What's your personal place in this story?
Yeah, that's where we're getting to, trying to figure out how can we figure out how humans' choices about foods also play into this. I think for myself, I could, with some experience, I could come to find things that formerly were disgusting to me not to be disgusting anymore. Disgust is a very cultural kind of emotion that you can learn your way out of. People come to be able to eat blue cheese, for instance, that formerly may have disgusted them, in part because of how bad it smells. And smell is, in fact, one of the other things, as we will hear, which zombies could also be using to decide what's disgusting and what's not.
Do you think, this is a very personal question, but could you take on a zombie diet? Could you find yourself loving to eat human flesh and just having that be part of your story?
We have a great comment from someone that says that humans have all the nutrients other humans need. So how much do you agree with that or disagree with that?
So I certainly agree that humans, as a form of meat, have the things that we need to grow and maintain our own meat. So that is why meat is such good food for us, and human flesh, all else being equal, would have those same nutrients for us. I think it would be a pretty long bridge to cross to get most people, myself included, to be interested in eating human flesh. But zombie flesh is a different matter, and I'll tell you more about that later too. That's the second part of our zombie food project.
I mean, it's interesting. We're now at a point where we could grow human flesh, and I wonder if that, petri dish human flesh, could that help to supply zombies with food, and in that way, sort of shift the burden of zombie killings away from us and toward a sustainable food model?
That's a terrific question. I think the lab-grown meat applying to human flesh is a very interesting topic that some people have started to ask about. I think that's probably more work than what needs to be done to find a foodstuff that would satisfy zombies. Again, they're hungry, we think, for anything. So if we could find some other easier to produce, mass-produced product that would keep them satisfied, that could also work.
Thank you so much. Let's transition to our second guest who may have something to say on that topic. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ann Barwich, assistant professor affiliated with both the Cognitive Science Program and the Department of History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine at Indiana University, where you also are, Peter. Ann, how would you characterize the aromatic bouquet of the apocalypse?
Surprisingly sweet, and a lot of rotting flesh, of course, but surprisingly sweet, and a lot of rotting cabbage. So in a certain way, very German.
How does that sense of smell in that world? It was the sweetness that really left me with a surprising feeling about the zombie world. But how does the sense of smell play into the decisions zombies make and how we feel about zombies in all of these interactions?
So there is actually a huge debate about whether, zombies really are guided by smell or not. Many people say so, but apparently a couple of people say they can't smell because, the brain is the first organ that literally explodes in terms of the cells are decomposing. But if we look at how they're looking for what's alive, what's not alive, they are pretty good at figuring out what's a human and also what's a human that's alive. And we do differ, of course, in body odor, dead and alive. And a good way to test that is a little bit more to differentiate what kind of molecules are part of human smell and human smell being alive, not being alive. And there's a huge difference. And we might even be able to trick them. So by actually using other animals that have a similar smell as we do. That is actually done, for instance, with pigs. So pigs have a surprisingly similar smell as we do. There are slight differences actually between...
You mean they smell like us? Like that you meet a pig and you think, no. All right. Yeah.
Well, they actually have there's a couple of smell molecules that are like us. So there's a pig pheromone that's also part of human smell. And so there's a couple of things that are similar. So it's not exactly the same smell, but there are certain key molecules which are shared.
And so how do we use those molecules to affect the behavior of the pig?
Oh, well, the question is whether the pheromone might not also... between pigs, you've got basically attraction between pigs. But of course, we perceive it as well. It's just that we're not attracted necessarily to pigs. I mean, maybe one or two people are, but that's possibly...
Not the topic of
that's
our
a
show.
different
Yeah, different show. And so what about how this plays into the story of zombies and what they're attracted to and what they're not?
So the question is rather what they're not attracted to, because we don't want to attract them. We want to repel them potentially. And of course, one of the things they're kind of differentiating between, of course, what's alive and what's not alive. And the molecules we have when we decay sometime in the future, hopefully in the later future, because, they're at the window just right now as I'm speaking, is you've got certain molecules like cadaverine. It smells, as it's called, like rotting flesh and a little bit sweet. This is why I mentioned the sweet smell. So this is basically what you see here. This is cadaverine. Then you've got pertussin and you've got methyl disulfide, which actually smells of rotting cabbage. And these are actually part of decomposing bodies. And we have at least more kind of body odor. So there's an interesting difference between how we smell and how dead people smell, luckily.
Do any living people have a little bit of those smells? Like, is it possible that I have a neighbor that has a faint hint of cadaverine? And does that make them less susceptible to zombies? Your cells are always breaking down a little bit, right? Or no, it's just when you're dead that these aromas turn up.
Well, usually they're kind of they're emerging through the decomposition of amino acids. You will hardly smell them. Yeah, I just saw there was a comment, Professor. Yes, if I mispronounce it, then it's because I'm German. We have different words for them.
So you imagine that maybe we could sort of bathe ourselves in putrescine and cadaverine, or however we're going to call it, and then walk out, and we would be immune to zombie attack.
The question is whether we really are, but the problem is, of course, we don't usually have these molecules at home. Usually, but an alternative is to actually have a dead pig. It's harder to find a dead human or certain molecules in your storage, but you can use a dead pig because we smell similar. There are only a few key molecules different between dead pig and dead humans. So if you don't have a fellow dead human or dead human or zombie at hand, you might just use a dead pig.
So you can have a big day of eating barbecue and staying safe from the zombies. It's a win-win. And what about how the zombies...
you can eat it. Yes.
And what about how the zombies interact with each other? And so are smells playing a role there? When two zombies meet, do they sniff?
So this is actually an open area of research because there are no human pheromones, of course, but I wonder sometimes to what extent, because we do have kind of chemical, socio-chemical communication, and there is a difference between, of course, with attraction between men and women, and we also have in-group and out-group preferences that are linked to smell. And I wonder to what extent, I mean, this would be a good area of research that also applies to zombies. That might be part of where they kind of hunt their humans, and whether also the humans have in-group and out-group things, because of course what you are what you eat in a certain way, that what you eat affects your metabolism. And if you, let's say, have a specific diet as a zombie, and let's say you only eat Germans who ate a lot of rotten cabbage, the question, of course, is whether you form your own little niche zombie group that recognizes each other by its own particular smell of an even enhanced rotten cabbage smell. And by the way, I'm allowed to say that because I'm German.
But so does that also mean that if you happen upon some zombies and they have the faint hint of cabbage, as though they've been eating some Germans, that you should be extra wary because maybe they've learned to like the smell of cabbage?
True, and I do wonder whether that might also change their preferences for each other. So to what extent they at some point go like, well, actually, that my neighboring zombie who smells particularly like cabbage, maybe I should have a try. So maybe we can change zombie preferences with smell as well.
And I mean, in humans, we know that the olfaction has a strong learning component. So when you're in utero, you learn to love the foods that your mom ate when she was pregnant. You learn as a child to love the foods that you eat in childhood. But with zombies, when does that learning happen? Or is there some vestige of their previous lives and their preferences? How do we imagine this unfolding?
I think there are really two things going on. One thing is, of course, what they like already being alive and then before being undead. But I also think because of the decay, their own decay, there will be changes in food preference that also link to smell. And that not just goes with like losing some teeth potentially and having a change of, let's say, preference for mouthfeel in terms of how the food tastes. But also since your olfactory sensory neurons are not going to regenerate anymore, well, there's a decay, of course, of your whole olfactory sensorium. So there might be at some point you lose a particular group of neurons, that you lose a particular group of receptors. So your whole, like the zombie smell would change around completely. Maybe at some point things that you like the zombie liked before that were kind of like, yeah, that's this kind of sweetness of body odor that at some point becomes a bit too sweaty, a bit too fatty. And maybe they go like, well, actually I'm on a diet. Too fatty smells are not good for me. Too fatty. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So a lot of work on chimpanzees recently has started to argue that they have culinary cultures. And so different chimpanzee groups like different foods. And what if different zombie groups really learn to have these totally different culinary cultures? Like it would be a fascinating, just interesting landscape.
It would be. We have some questions from the audience. We have Dr. Zed, who has mentioned that they encounter some of the odors that you're describing in living patients, and it usually means they need emergency surgery. So every once in a while, we've got that going on. And I want to bring Peter back to answer this next question. Hello again, Peter.
Hello.
This one is from Liz Grumbach. She says, honestly, downtown is a bit overrun right now, and what can she do to not smell yummy to the zombie hordes?
Well, it's the kind of decay. In the sense that you might actually want to cover yourself in a couple of, for instance, Cadaverine, or also in dimethyl disulfide. You might also try the rotting cabbage at some point. So if the kind of stinky stuff is not at hand, rub yourself maybe in rotting cabbage.
So that's the sauerkraut emergency treatment. Peter, did you have a comment?
Well, I mostly want to say we don't know yet. So this is the research that's going on, and it's hard to do this kind of research. You know, the zombie fMRI studies are just getting off the ground. There was the result a decade ago now that when a dead Atlantic salmon was scanned as it was viewing pictures of humans in social interactions, and the dead salmon was asked to categorize what emotions these humans are showing, there were significant differences of activation in parts of its brain, indicating it was paying attention to what was going on in the images in front of it and categorizing human behavior. And I think that is very hopeful for the field of zombie fMRI. It's also a little worrisome to think about what the zombie fish are, thinking when they're categorizing our behavior. But we don't have all those techniques for getting the zombies into the magnets safely yet. And so what we're having to do to try to answer these questions is resort to plain old behavioral studies. And so we're going to be taking people and we're going to be putting different cues on those people and then running them by zombies and seeing whether they are attracted to those people still and attack them, or whether they ignore them, whether they show disgust. And so those kinds of cues that we're going to apply are some of the scents that Anne is developing, some of the different kinds of visual cues that I was mentioning as well. And I should send a shout out. We're looking for volunteers who want to participate in those studies. So if you're willing to, help us with that research, please get in touch.
Call to action.
Do you feel a little torn, Peter, in that, obviously having zombies around benefits your research program?
Always has.
And so I'm sure you feel on behalf of humanity, but do you also feel a little bit guilty that this apocalypse is actually benefiting you and your legacy?
Not really. I think that we are trying to figure out ways that we could get both zombies and humans to be able to live together, if not in harmony, at least not in mutual destruction. If we can do things like figuring out what are foodstuffs, as you were asking about before, that could keep zombies satisfied without them feeling the need to go after living humans, that'd be great. The other part of the zombie food project, as I alluded to before, is not what is food for zombies, but how about zombies as food for humans? Can we figure out ways that we can consume zombies? I think that there are ways to prepare zombie flesh, as the question from Diana earlier was about. They would have all the nutrients that we need. We need to know how to make them non-infectious for us to consume. Yeah. But then, of course, we come to the problem of humans' disgust towards that. And that's the next issue that we're trying to solve.
You've got your first volunteer in Liz Grumbach right there. So she's signing up for this project. You can send her some zombie steaks and she can fry them up from her Phoenix condo.
That's perfect.
I think fermentation of the zombies seems like it has real possibilities in that fermentation allows the transformation of food flavors. It often gets rid of pathogens. It's been employed for a long time in that way. And we know that even though some fermented foods have very off-putting orthonasal aromas, that we can learn to appreciate the retronasal aromas. And so maybe there's something to be learned from the many kinds of meat fermentations. Can you make like a pad thai with a fermented zombie sauce? Just so you get a hint of that, you get a little bit of the umami, because of multiplied by the number of people, you could really deal with a lot of zombies that way.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
One of my favorite dishes that I've heard about and not tried yet is lamb that's prepared in the Faroe Islands by taking raw lamb and letting it hang in their sheds that have the sea wind blowing through, and over time a green fungus grows on them and they ferment and rot, and they have this flavor that the islanders just think is amazing. Other people who come visit don't think it's quite as amazing. It's been described as a cross between tasting like Parmesan and death. But if we could come to appreciate that with zombies, then that'd be terrific. And Erica, you're going to be teaching us how to do fermentation over the next couple of days, right?
Yeah, for anyone that's registered for the Zombie Apocalypse Medicine meeting, you have the option of interactive workshops, which are right after this Eat, Pray, Run session. So I will be talking a bit about fermentation, sourdough starters, making your own sauerkraut, simple pickled veggies, stuff that you can do really easily in your own home.
Excellent.
And some of which might repel zombies with that added benefit. I mean, do you all think that you would, if we were able to ferment zombies I mean, is that something you think you could learn to love? I mean, I feel pretty favorably disposed to it myself.
I would try it at least. I would give it a try, but I think the most important thing will be the branding. How do you actually sell this stuff? And I think that's more to it, because a lot of the stuff we like to eat is actually disgusting when it comes to the smell. I mean, if you think of cheese, we had stinky cheese just in the comments. Well, it kind of smells like teenage feet that haven't been washed for weeks and it being in tender socks. But we love to eat it, especially French cheese, because the retronasal smell is different. So I think it's the branding.
We've got someone else talking about the branding with fake meat to feed zombies, and it seems like it could be applicable to how we're going to brand zombie meat for humans.
Absolutely.
So we want it to sort of be more realistic, to trick the mind.
Well, that brings up another possibility. Can we alter zombie meat so that other species eat more of it? You know, rewild, tons of wolves eating zombies, and so we can both restore our ecosystems and keep zombie populations down, because I think we would all agree we're not going to get rid of them entirely.
I think vultures would be up to the task. So you want to get the carry on eating animals in on the job. But I think the branding is a great point. And I wanted to mention that, how do we get people to eat zombies? That seems like a very hard problem, but it's actually the case that basically the most expensive culinary item on our planet is zombies. These guys, cordyceps, these are caterpillars that are infected with the cordyceps fungus. And so this is the caterpillar body. This is the fungus growing out of it. $500 an ounce for these guys.
What do they use that with?
So that is super popular, for instance, in China, to be eaten because of its aphrodisiac qualities, or believed aphrodisiac qualities, at least. And so if we could change the branding of zombie flesh to be more in terms of it as an aphrodisiac, I think we could turn the corner on this thing. And I think exactly that, by, repeated exposure to zombie flesh and just trying it, we'd get people to like it more.
Zombie meat. It's sexy. It's sustainable. Help keep the planet.
So Diana is bringing up something that was kind of tongue-in-cheek.
And I've got one for you too.
I'm glad you do.
I'm going to leave you to your munching there.
I feel a strange urge to go look for sauerkraut. I don't quite know why, but
fingers are a good way to start. It's kind of the entry food. They're small. They're like chicken fingers.
Yeah, I think that they would sell. Like, that's a good model. I imagine in a year we could be in a totally different place with this. Although, yeah, Peter, I take your point that zombies are still so unstudied that maybe to imagine we can do too much too soon is hubris. The biological world is so immense and our knowledge is so little.
Finger food.
And on that note, I think we have to wrap up this episode today. Thanks for sampling all of our brains today on Eat, Pray, Run. If you are registered for ZAM 2020, please tune in to the interactive workshops from 11 a.m. to noon. You can check your TV guide for the link and just click that. And until next time, I hope all of you eat well. I know that I will. Maybe it won't be zombie meat, but I will certainly try to diversify my palate between now and then.
Thank you all.
It's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.